Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. And it's not just the pod that's free, guys. It's all the content on the Gersnet website, the forums, written content, opinion pieces, that kind of stuff, all absolutely free. So get yourself on there. It is episode 88 of the Gersnet Podcast. I am your host tonight. I am Colin Armstrong. And obviously there's no football at the moment, but there's still plenty to talk about. It's been another interesting week in the world of Scottish football. If you like what you hear, we would encourage you to subscribe to the post and share on social media. Get the word out there that we're here and what we're doing. I think we're around about 2,700 subscribers at the moment and climbing. So please join them and leave a comment if you want. The podcast is live tonight. We are live at 9:30 on the Sunday night, but it will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and Spotify. So, an interesting week yet again. You would think with no football, there would be not a lot to talk about. But it's the exact opposite, and this whole thing with the SPFL is rumbling on. Even today, there was still stuff coming out. So, I mean, I was doing the agenda for tonight's show, and I felt like I had to update it every half hour or so because it just seems to be a rolling story the whole time. So we'll get through that. And joining me to do that tonight, I've got two guests tonight. I'll give a warm welcome back to David Fraser first because it seems like ages since I've last spoken to him. How are you, David, and how's your lockdown? I don't think I've spoken to you since this whole situation developed.
Good evening, Colin. Good evening, listeners. I'm a lockdown situation's pretty much as everyone else's, I guess, Colin. Just kind of struggling on and rebonding with the children currently. I made a pizza with my young daughters today, which was a bit fraught with danger, shall we say, and frustration amongst the two kids. But other than that, just like yourselves, just listening into the fallout from the SPFL board resolution. So, eager to discuss it.
Okay, can I ask what the hair situation's like, David? Because mine's is getting a bit. I ended up, mine was in a curtain today, the centre parting curtain, and I don't think I've had that since the mid-90s. So how was your situation at your end? Have you resorted to the lockdown cut yet? Loads of people are doing this clipper thing.
The lockdown cut, I've always did the lockdown cut, I think.
All right, ahead of your time.
for quite a while. No, I've been the proud owner of clippers for quite a while, Colin. So I'm not really at the mercy of requiring to visit the hairdresser to the same extent that some other males in the population would be. So I'm not really. I keep myself nice and trim in any case. So it's just business as usual for me in that respect.
Business as usual. Okay, and also joining us tonight is Ross Bennett, fellow host, guesting tonight. How are you, Ross? How's things down in the Big Smoke?
No, Joe, it's been a tough week. The light bulb in my bedroom, living room, and oven all went out this week. So I'll be surprised if we even get to talk about the football because it's all go here.
It sounds like riveting stuff, Ross. And how's your hair situation?
Hair on my head, not too bad. Elsewhere, it's getting a bit 1970s.
All right, okay. That took a turn that I've got to be honest, I didn't expect it to take.
That's probably where I'm feeling this quarantine the most is the fact that all the spas and the salons are closed and I can't get myself, ship shape like I normally am, which is a shame. But thankfully, this is an audio medium rather than a visual.
Yeah. I mean, you were kind of alluding to pubic hair there, so I'm really glad. Sorry that this is an audio thing than a video thing. So myself, as I said, I was at the curtains today, and I was just looking at it, going, "Oh my God!" I think it was like 1994 the last time my hair was like this, and I am reaching a stage where I'm approaching the clippers anyway. So I'm worried that if I do go with the clippers, then that'll be me. I'll never see my hair again. So, worrying times. But anyway, right, we'll crack on. Now we've got the pleasantries out the way. Guys, an interesting week again this week. Rangers delivered their much welcomed or much anticipated, dossier on, the evidence that they felt they had that the SPFL had not done things quite the way they should have been done. And then it's just been like a game of tennis ever since. Rangers and other clubs have been making certain claims. SPFL have been batting them back, and it's just been like that for the last 3 or 4 days. So, I mean, the dossier itself, 200 pages long. The main sort of things that were highlighted in it, Rangers claim that they feel that Neil Doncaster has breached his duties as SPFL chief executive, that important information was withheld from the member clubs before they voted for the proposed resolution, including a reputed 10 million of liabilities if the resolution was passed. There was obviously the situation with Dundee's vote, and there was a whole lack of integrity about that. Rangers also cited behaviour of Rod McKenzie, the SPFL legal advisor. They also claimed that threats were made to member clubs, and they also raised the SFA SPFL letter to UEFA. Ross, I'll come to you first on this. Now, we had to wait a while, obviously, for the dossier, but that was within the timescales that the SPFL had set out, so we need to be clear about that. But, I mean, was it the dossier you were expecting? I think after the length of time, we were always going to feel maybe slightly let down by it, but I for one, feel there's more than enough in there to warrant an independent investigation. How did you view it?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Before it came out, I was actually a little nervous that this whole thing was almost deliberately ramped up by the media, built up to fail, because we talk about the terms of smoking gun and bringing down the house of cards, all these phrases that were conveniently placed by the media to big this thing up so that when it does emerge, it might feel as a bit of a damp squib. But the information that's in there, it's all pertinent, it's all interesting, and it does point to the one thing that Rangers are alleging is shambolic governance. And all they've done is they've very, very clearly and very eloquently set out examples of where governance has not stood up to the requirements, and where people are maybe not meeting their fiduciary duties, they're not acting in the best interest of the office that they hold. So I think, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about the way that the media handled all of this with phrases such as smoking gun, and the way that immediately it was portrayed as a bit of a fail on Rangers' part. Was I disappointed in it? No, not at all. I think the information that's in there, as you say, it more than warrants an independent investigation. And the way that Rangers have handled this is quite clear. It's quite clever. Sorry, after they've released this dossier, which they very securely transferred it to just member clubs. So the fact that it's gone straight to the SPFL into the media as well, I'm sure we'll come on to. They've then come out and said, all we're saying is that there should be an impartial, independent investigation, and these are the reasons why. And if you could just, for 5 minutes, remove any bias or any partiality that you have against Rangers, just look at the facts and say, is this the best that we can get? Is this what we deserve as Scottish football fans? And when you look at what's gone on and the questions that have been asked around the Dundee vote, around the bullying and intimidation, around the sponsorship deals, the 10 million payment that might have to be reimbursed, all of these things you look at and go, do you know what? No, we should be asking questions. So I think it's delivered exactly what Rangers promised it delivered, but it perhaps didn't deliver what other people suspected it should have delivered.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I was speaking on mute there. I had actually started speaking, but I got the warning on my screen telling me that no one can hear me. David, I'll come to you now. Again, similar sort of question. We'd waited for quite a while for this. And it was heavy reading, 200 pages, umpteen annexes, and a lot of legal jargon. I tried to read through it, and after a few pages, I found it quite heavy reading. So I basically, skimmed through it to try and pick out the main points that I felt were pertinent. I mean, the issue around the liabilities, the 10 million of liabilities, I thought that stood out for me. Obviously, the vote with Dundee is so crooked that it doesn't even bear talking about. So again, did it hit all the marks for you, or did you feel after such, sort of 2-3 week wait for it, that it was a bit of a damp squib?
Like Ross, I certainly don't view it as a damp squib at all, Colin. I think the club have been very measured in playing with a straight bat with regards to this. I don't think they have unnecessarily hyped the contents of the dossier. I think that they have homed in on the pertinent points with regards to poor governance, as Ross mentioned, and bringing to light some of the salient and pertinent information which appears to have been withheld from member clubs. I think that's the basic thrust of this, that Stuart Robertson and to an extent Douglas Park today, following on from Stuart's interviews with the media on Thursday, I've basically shone a light on the SPFL executive and board are failing in their duty to represent their member clubs. I think Douglas Park today used language along the lines of, if you treat the SPFL as a PLC, if shareholders, i.e. a club, were to raise questions about the governance of the company, then an investigation would be held. And that's all, in effect, that Rangers are asking for. And I don't think it's unreasonable in what they've published. I think they've set it out in a very orderly manner. And I think that the questions that's been raised from it are fair and worthwhile. And I think that the end point where Rangers are asking for an independent investigation to take place are more than reasonable. So it'll be interesting to see what comes about after the EGM on Tuesday.
Ross, now Rangers delivered the dossier. I think it was at 10 a.m. and within minutes, the contents of it were being discussed. Within the hour, the SPFL had responded, and your usual sort of suspects in the media were starting to bump their gums in terms of trying to downplay some of the stuff that was in the dossier. Now, the first thing I want to talk about here, now, as I said, it was a 200-page document. The clubs, the member clubs that it was sent to, they've taken their time to read through it and have their sort of view. And I'm sure that there've been board meetings up and down the country to sort of discuss the next moves and maybe how they were going to vote. Yet the SPFL board issued a statement within the hour. It seemed, in my opinion, to be pre-prepared, and it was just all about discrediting the content of the dossier, rather than saying, right, okay, these are fairly decent allegations. We will have an independent investigation because we've got nothing to hide, and that's something I think that no one in certain sections of the media has ever been able to answer that question. If they have nothing to hide, then why are they so against having this independent investigation? And to go through a 200-page document, there's no way they've read through that in that time, yet they were issuing a statement within the hour dismissing the dossier. How did that look to you?
Well, this is from the same organisation that couldn't find an email from Dundee Football Club. I imagine that we sent it to the clubs in a PDF format, so the same format that the Dundee vote was meant to be received in. But we'll move on from that. It was entirely pre-written, of course it was. And again, speaking for myself, not speaking for Gersnet, this is my opinion. It must have been pre-written because, any of the listeners who have worked for a small or medium-sized business will know that if you're trying to put out a statement externally or even internal communications, there'll be the sentiment will be thought up by the guy in charge, who will then give the brief to your communications guy, who will write up a short copy. They'll send it back to the chief and say, does this work? There'll be some tweaks, there'll be some emails back and forward. And by, a few hours later, you're ready to go with your statement. So regardless of the fact that they have to read, digest, and discuss 200 pages worth of information, they've managed to do all that within 20 minutes. It's ludicrous. So it was entirely pre-written. Of course it was. The question of if you've done nothing wrong, what have you got to hide, is a relevant one. And on the face of it, it can seem a little bit facetious sometimes. It's it's a bit like, why wouldn't you want the police to look through all your emails? If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to hide. And sometimes the argument can seem a little bit thin. But it's the same argument that was leveled at us back in 2012, or even before that, around EBTs and tax arrangements, when Rangers were saying, look, there's nothing illegal about this. Huge sections of the media, again driven by we know who, were saying, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to hide, so let's have an independent investigation into Rangers tax affairs. Let's have a look. It's startling that this, one rule for one and another rule for another, they just do not seem to. You'd think that they would be willing to welcome this investigation and say, do you know what, Rangers, we can humiliate you here. We can embarrass you by showing that we did everything above board. We can show you that everything was totally kosher, everything was legit. Let's do it. And what's even better is you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay to make yourselves look like absolute clowns and discredit yourself permanently. Then fine, because we've done nothing wrong, so let's do it. But they're not. That's the thing. Why not? It's so clear that there's corruption at the highest office in Scottish football. They're trying to hide this. They're digging themselves deeper and deeper into lies. The stuff that's come out today from Inverness Cali Thistle is staggering. The fact that they're on record now saying that we will back up claims of bullying, of harassment, of intimidation. It's so clear that the SPFL are trying to hide this and trying to cover it up, and that they smell fear. When was the last time you saw Neil Doncaster be wheeled out to give any kind of spoken interview? Because I really cannot remember it. They're afraid because Rangers are finally, they have their foot on the neck. They're really, really going for it. And I'm a little bit fearful for what's going to happen on Tuesday when we come to the vote, because Scottish football is nothing if it's not tribal. So people have already decided how they're going to vote. And to me, getting the required number of votes to get an independent investigation is, the chance of that are next to nothing. So I'm a little bit nervous for that. But just seeing the effect that this has had on the people running the Scottish game, it's staggering. And that Rangers are onto something here. So why wouldn't they welcome that investigation? It's because they're clearly trying to hide something.
David, I've got the statement here from the SPFL on Thursday in front of me. It starts, it is now a month since Rangers accused the SPFL of bullying and corruption relating to the Dundee FC return. At last, Rangers have issued their dossier. Dossier is in inverted commas, and we will now take time to review it before responding to all 42 clubs. Now, even the way that's written in some of the wording of it, terms like "at last," Rangers have issued their dossier. Now, I think it was John Bennett on Saturday came out and said, the reason it was at last is because Rangers were running to the timeline which the SPFL board had given them. So, at last doesn't count because, that's the time they were told to get it in by. And also the fact that they've put, dossier in inverted commas in a sort of ironic or they've provided their dossier kind of thing. I mean, even that seems a very sort of childish and petty response to something that is actually quite serious.
Yeah, it's there's no surprise really, Colin. I looked at the SPFL's board. The SPFL board's letter to all SPFL clubs released on the 8th, and that is littered with very emotive language. And I draw attention to one of the paragraphs with regards to Rangers' claims. I quote here: "As everyone now knows, Rangers have made several false allegations about corruption, coercion and bullying on the part of the SPFL. They've also called without good reason for the suspension of the SPFL's Chief Executive and Legal Counsel. Now, with regards to the first part of that paragraph there, as everyone now knows, Rangers have made several false allegations about corruption, coercion and bullying on the part of the SPFL. I think Stuart Robertson and his media calls on Thursday night actually refuted that and went on record as saying that Rangers have at no point have made allegations of corruption, coercion and bullying on the part of the SPFL board or executive. So for the SPFL board to come out with stuff like that is, it certainly is an attempt to set agendas, to paint the appellant, i.e. Rangers, in a bad light. It seems to be part of the course. It's very, as I say, very emotive. It's unhelpful. It doesn't appear to be, leading the way in terms of, a demonstrable show of leadership where the board and the executive take on board the complaints of a member club and handle it in a professional and courteous manner. It's very aggressive language, and I think that it's obviously, as Ross made mention of there, it would tend to betray a degree of tribalism. It seems though, and arrogance in many respects, in the sense that we are the board. It's not a case of do as you would like us to do. It's a case of do as we tell you to do. And this of tone of that letter is arrogant. It's very condescending, and as Douglas Park made mention of in his statement on Club Media today, it's not very professional. It's not taking account of a legitimate grievance of a member club, and it's just a case of do as we tell you. And I think that's born out of the fact that they've been used to acting in such a manner for such an extended period of time. It's just a case of, from their perspective, business as usual. Whether that comes to back to bite them in the long run remains to be seen. But I hark back to the point I made in the previous answer, that it'll be interesting to see what comes of the EGM on Tuesday.
Ross, now, obviously the SPFL, and as I said earlier on, various sections of the media have had their say. The SPFL, outside the statement, which I just read there just now, which David referenced also, they've accused Douglas Park of threatening Neil Doncaster. In what way? I don't know. Did they ask for a square go outside a kebab shop? I don't know. Rangers have obviously denied this. They also made an accusation that Stuart Robinson, of missing a vital meeting. But again, I was watching an interview on Saturday, and Rangers are claiming that Rangers took legal advice before that meeting, and there was a feeling that the whole thing was being set up for Rangers to take a bit of a pummeling in that meeting. They weren't given the proper advice, and so they deliberately avoided that meeting. How did you feel about all that? Because it just seems to be a series of claims and counterclaims. And I would also ask, if Douglas Park and Stuart Robinson have been behaving in a way that the SPFL deem as inappropriate, why did it only come to light after the dossier arrived? Why did the SPFL not raise this before?
But absolutely, why did they not raise it before? But also, if that was the case, if Douglas Park had made a threat or an allegation or something along those lines, why would he now be pushing for a full investigation into the facts? He's not going to push for something that uncovers some wrongdoing on his own part. But what the ironic thing about all of this is that Rangers are kind of not even alleging themselves, but Rangers are passing on allegations that clubs have come to Rangers and said, look, we felt intimidated, we felt bullied. Inverness have come out today and put that on paper, saying they were bullied and harassed. So Rangers have kind of put all of this into the dossier and told all the other clubs, look, there was this bullying and harassment going on. To which the SPFL responded and said, No, there was no bullying. There were some robust conversations, but there was no bullying. So for them to then turn around and say, we were threatened by Douglas Park, it's almost magical in its irony to say, no, we didn't threaten anyone else. We had some robust conversations, but we never threatened anyone. Douglas Park threatened us. It's nonsense. The Stuart Robertson thing is, it's almost a silly one. Like, it's very, very clear that he was given minutes or hours to prepare for this meeting where he was going to have to state the case of Rangers and what we were putting forward and defend us, defend everything else. And it was entirely set up for him to fail. But Stuart Robertson is in a very, very difficult and very, very compromised position, because obviously he holds that place on the SPFL board. So on the face of it, people from the outside can say, how can Rangers have any issue with what the SPFL are doing? They've got a guy on the board, so they're almost running Scottish football. At the same time, Stuart Robertson cannot resign if he sees something going on that he doesn't like, because then it's Stuart Robertson's weak. Stuart Robertson walks away from the fight, and that's something that has, to be fair, dogged his career at Rangers so far, is that he's weak and he doesn't stand up for himself enough. So he can't walk away, but he can't be seen to be kind of engaging in the process that's led us to this shambles. So for them to then, come up with this meeting where the spotlight was going to be entirely on him, with no time to prepare, with no kind of knowledge beforehand of the agenda of the meeting, anything like that, I don't blame him for not showing up, because I don't know how he was supposed to handle himself in that meeting. But what I would say, obviously we've mentioned senior people from the club have been doing media interviews over the last couple of days, which is kind of rare for Rangers. And obviously Robertson has had a fair media presence going on Sky Sports News throughout the week. I think that the club have handled themselves really, really well. And when you compare the transcripts of what Robertson, Bennett and Park have said over the last few days, compare that to the approach of the SPFL, who have come out and almost tried to take the piss out of Rangers through statements, like you say, with the inverted commas of dossier. At last, Rangers have provided their so-called dossier of evidence. Compare and contrast the two styles. One is scattergun and trying to deride a member club who are only pushing for transparency and proper governance. The other is well measured, it's eloquent, it's well put together, and it just contains facts, with the slight exception of a slide dig from Douglas Park when he says maybe McLennan can address that when he sits down for his next Q&A with himself, which is a wonderful, wonderful little roast. It says a lot about the organisation, the way that they're handling this whole thing, the way that they're using their kind of chums in the media. Your Michael Stewart has been bumping his gums relentlessly. Graham Spears. I've just seen just now on Twitter that in the next hour or so, there's going to be an interview with Doncaster exclusive with Keith Jackson. So I wonder how that's come about and who's brokered that deal. It's laughable, and yet it's everything you would expect from the SPFL.
David, as Ross alluded to there, it does kind of feel kind of different, from previous occasions. Rangers have, on occasions, kicked up a wee bit of a stink and looked a wee bit silly at times. But it definitely feels different this time, and it feels like we have our house in order. And, as the week rolled on, Rangers delivered their dossier, the SPFL delivered their reports, and there was some accusations fired at each other over the fence. And then Rangers made this offer to pay for any independent investigation. And again, that just, I don't know how you feel, but again, that just felt another step and another statement to show that this is different this time. The Rangers have come forward, moved on, in the last sort of 5 or 6 years in the boardroom, and we're not going to be sort of just dismissed as easily as we have been in the past. And I don't want to make this all about Rangers and the SPFL, because other clubs, which we're about to come on to, have also had their say in this. But it does feel like if this had happened previously, then Rangers would have been swatted to the side a lot easier. It seems to me that we have our house in order on this occasion.
It may well appear to some that we have our house in order in a different manner than we've had in the past. I think it's important to note that in the past, when Rangers have, in my estimation, have raised legitimate gripes with regards to things like conflicts of interest, I think that the club's position has been compromised because of the previous chairman's past. I think it's fair to say that. I think it was always going to be a stick to beat Dave King with. If he decided to pursue a complaint against SPFL governance, I think his past in South Africa was always going to be thrown up in his face. So from that perspective, I think Rangers were always starting out from a weakened position. The big difference for me is that Douglas Park and the other board members are not saddled with that perceived or alleged baggage. Obviously, Dave King's situation is poured over by various journalists, and agendas are set out from that point. There's no suggestion, certainly to the best of my knowledge, that any impropriety or accusations of impropriety can ever be levelled at any members of the current Rangers board, certainly not the chairman. So I think that is the major difference. And I think that the club, rightly, in my opinion, have had enough of being marginalised and sidelined to the extent where Rangers, being one of the major clubs in Scottish football, have been actively dismissed in any grievances that they've had in the past. And I think it's well past the point where Rangers should be afforded the respect that they're due, which they haven't had in the recent past with regards to any backwards and forwards of issues between the two entities. And I think that Rangers, as a club, have drawn a line in the stand. They've drawn a line in the sand and they're making a stand. But I do genuinely believe, despite what a lot of other media outlets might be trying to actively promote, that they do have the governance and the well-being of Scottish football at the centre of this. When liabilities like £10 million are brought to light, and the potential issues that could arise from not being made aware of the consequences of a vote due to insufficient and incomplete material information being circulated about member clubs, I think that is a haymaker when it comes to actually, promoting the standpoint that we do deserve an independent investigation into what can only be described as a pretty poor corporate governance. I think it's as simple as that, Colin.
I wouldn't disagree, David, to be honest with you. I wouldn't disagree. Ross, coming back to yourself now, there was another thing, and again, this just seems to be so many facets to this that it's hard to keep an eye on the whole picture. But there was, at the time of the vote, the original vote, and some of the clubs who had, especially the clubs who had been relegated, they really kicked up a stink, and quite rightly so. To be relegated, by proxy, essentially, just seems wrong. Now, a lot of people have said that, especially a club like Hearts, they've not had the best of seasons. They're in this situation through their own ineptitude, and you kind of buy some of that. You think, they've had a horrific season. I felt very early on in the season that they were relegation fodder. But the fact is, we're only sort of 75, 80% of our way through the season. Hearts are still within touching distance, and there's other teams in other divisions, there's only maybe a point or two in it. And to just have that right bang, doom, you're away, that felt, out of all of it, that's the thing that I felt the most unfair. And at the time, there was the whole, right, we'll look at league reconstruction, and Anne Budge bought into it. I think she's been played like a fiddle on this, I must admit. And yesterday it was announced, rather conveniently, that there would be no league reconstruction. Now, the convenience side of it is the deadline for the original vote has now passed. So any clubs that now feel, well, wait a minute, we want to do a Dundee and take back our original vote and change it, they can't do that because the actual deadline has passed now. Again, is that another sign of just how kind of cloak and dagger it all feels with the SPFL at the moment and various other interested parties?
Oh, of course, and I think that's a very good way of putting it, is cloak and dagger, because we do not know what's gone on behind the scenes, from the Dundee vote right through to today. We don't know how these clubs have decided that there will be no league reconstruction. It wasn't even supposed to be formally announced yet, but again, this information has just been broken in the media before the clubs affected have been told. It's staggeringly badly run, and you have to question why anyone wouldn't want an investigation into all of this. I absolutely agree with you on the issues of clubs such as Hearts, Partick Thistle in particular, 1 or 2 points adrift, and I think have a game in hand. It's just unfair for these clubs to be relegated in this way, because, I mean, look at the way that the Scottish, the Premiership works, is that we have a split, top 6 and bottom 6. So the chances are that Hearts will be playing the 5 other poorest sides in the league this year. And actually, if there was a betting man, I'd probably be putting money on Hearts to survive this, because, they will be playing all of the weaker sides and they'll know what they're up against. And we've seen it before with teams. Once the split happens, teams are playing the other teams around them. The league takes on a completely different face. It's totally different. So it's not right to just relegate these clubs. I mean, we also then have to take a look at Brecon City, who are not getting relegated from the bottom of League 2. Now, that's a convenient one because their chief executive is also on the SPFL board. So good one to bear in mind that. And that's, again, this is the cloak and dagger nature of it, that they've said, we're going to can the season here. We're going to make a small exception for one of our board chums, that Brecon won't go down. Kelty, Hearts and Brora Rangers obviously have put out statements saying that that's shambolic and unfair. At this point, I have no idea why they would want to join the SPFL, but that's fine. And the backdrop of all of this is you have Celtic, who are desperate to end the season, and I just don't know why. I don't know why they want to end the season so bad, because let's be clear, it's 14 points. Yes, we have a game in hand. Yes, we have to play them twice, so we could make up 9 of those 14 points. We'll end up with a handful of points away from them. Let's be absolutely realistic. The chances of us, if the season is completed, actually winning this season are so slim and so remote. So Celtic, barring a disaster for them and a miracle for us, would be winning this season on the park. Why do they not want to do that? Why do they not want to win it on the park? Just pause it now. Pick it up when we can, obviously when it's safe to do so, whether that's behind closed doors or not, and win it on the park. And then there will be no question, there will be no asterisk, there will be no question of integrity. We all know the clubs could already get their money, whether that's in the form of loans or whether the clubs vote to receive money early. I don't understand why they would be pushing so hard to end the season and get awarded the title without completing the season. Cloak and dagger, of course it is. And other clubs are starting to see this now. Other clubs that, yes, so far most of them are clubs that have some kind of, negative impact from this. So your Partick Thistles, it's other clubs are starting to speak up. And that's, I think, when maybe the dynamic of this whole thing will shift, is when more and more clubs put out statements saying, you know what, this is unfair and something does need to change. And that's what's going to make Neil Doncaster's position untenable.
David, as Ross said there, a host of other clubs have either entered the fray or re-entered the fray. Hearts have came out. As I said, I think Anne Budge has not came up particularly strong in this. Partick Thistle had put their side over 2-3 weeks ago. We spoke about it on the pod. I think it was either last week or the week before. They'd said they'd received decent legal advice that said they could pursue a legal angle, but they weren't going to do so. And the suspicion on the show last week was that they'd been assured that league reconstruction would see them okay. Falkirk came out on Friday night, but Inverness came out today with some absolutely damning stuff. I've got some of it here. Says, without going into the specifics at this time, please know that we will testify to the bullying and threats made against our club on Friday the 10th by an SPFL board member and the threats against others by the same SPFL board member, and how these threats were reported back to the centre and to the SPFL CEO directly on the day. It also goes on to say that we believe that serious questions remain over the actions of the MD of one club during the now infamous vote on April 10th and what happened between the submission of their legally binding no vote before the fake 5 p.m. deadline and 5 days later when they became the only club out of the 42 to have negotiations, in inverted commas, with the CEO and chairman of the SPFL and with a big hitter or persons unknown. Now, I mean, I think, again, I think it was John Bennett that came out on Saturday saying that, you know, the SPFL were trying to sort of polarise Rangers on this and make it out to be that it was Rangers against the SPFL and that we were the only club, you know, throwing our toys out the pram, so to speak. But some of the statements that have come out from the likes of Hearts, Partick Thistle, Falkirk statement was very strong. Inverness's today, I think, has been the strongest of the lot. It's not just us, is it? You know, there is a feeling out there amongst a lot of clubs that something's rotten to the core here.
Undoubtedly, Colin, undoubtedly. I think the joint statement from Scott Gardner and Ross Morrison today, it was certainly probably the most damning one. I don't think they've minced their words, whereas other clubs have maybe not been as succinct, shall we say, in how they view the actions of certain people. Gary Dean's statement on Friday night was quite telling, and I quote here, he said that the handling of this entire situation has been farcical, ranging from decisions made by the SPFL board to clubs who have what can only be charitably described as misled and deceived. I would imagine that is pointing the finger at Dundee and how they've behaved in their voting. Also, George Fraser of the Lowland League, with regards to the situation that Ross mentioned with Brora, Rangers and Kelty Hearts being unable to have their playoff with Brechin City as the current positions stand, that tells a story. George Fraser has used the phrase that pressure has been applied with regards to Brechin not wanting to enter the Highland League as opposed to the Lowland League. So that has ramifications as well, and the implications are for the four-way agreement between the SFA, the SPFL, the Highland Football League and the Lowland Football League. So there's serious points that have been made by other clubs and other league bodies which have to be answered. It just, you know, underlines the case that this isn't, as you've rightly mentioned, this isn't just a case of Rangers, you know, having a problem with the Premiership title being awarded prematurely to the team that's currently in first place. This is more about a lack of transparency, a lack of respect amongst clubs, the procedures and the protocols of the company don't appear to have been upheld by the officers of the company and the members of the executive board, and that's fundamentally damning. And the fact that a number of clubs, you know, you made mention of Falkirk there. Falkirk were a point behind Raith Rovers, the same number of games played, but with, if memory serves me correctly, a goal difference of plus 20 over Raith Rovers. They clearly had something to gain from the season being played out to a finish. But I believe that they voted in favour of the resolution. Now, they did so on the belief that the material information provided to them circulated in the circular, that they did that in good faith. They made that vote in good faith. Now, if the material information has been withheld from them in order to promote a certain way of voting, then the ramifications of that are massive. And the only way that can be scrutinised and unearthed to the benefit of all 42 member clubs is with an independent investigation. And as I keep going back to, I keep repeating myself here, the EGM on Tuesday will tell a story, and it'll be very interesting to see what the outcome of it is.
I don't think there's any denying that, David. I mean, yeah, again, I mean, it seems strange that there's no football, but, you know, we're going into another week of high drama, I suppose is the best way to put it. You know, and I still find it staggering that given the current situation, I just feel the focus of the SPFL and some of the member clubs is all wrong. You know, it's obvious that we're not going to have football for a very long time. It's obvious that we're not going to have football with supporters on the ground for possibly even longer. And I don't think there's any doubt that some clubs are going to tumble here. And I've always felt that the minute this situation revealed itself to be as serious as it is, I mean, we're in week 9 of lockdown, and I know there's different views from UK government and Scottish government now. It would appear that we're going to go in different paths, but the situation is still pretty serious, and economically, it's devastating. And I've always sort of viewed it as we should be doing everything possible. The governing body in charge of Scottish football should be doing everything possible to ensure that we come out with the same amount of clubs in existence as we did as we went into this thing. And that doesn't seem to be the main focus here. The main focus seems to be elsewhere. Who's driving that? Well, I've got my suspicions, and I'm sure most of us have got suspicions as well, but don't want to go down that road. But it just seems wrong to me. And I think most of the leagues are guilty of this. You know, none of them seem to be saying, right, how do we protect football? How do we protect the clubs until we're able to play again? It's all about, right, they're getting to the Champions League, they're getting the title, they're getting relegated, and, you know, to hell with it. And that's a strategy that I find quite confusing, and I don't get it at all. And it seems worse up here. It definitely seems worse up here. However, right, guys, I thought we would have a wee look at some of the media commentators and all of this. As I said, you can bet your mortgage on how some of them are going to respond. Now, Ewan Murray he put out an interesting tweet this afternoon. I retweeted it at the time. Ewan writes for The Guardian. He says, if you remove Rangers from this argument, as may well be helpful for people getting wildly upset about it, sentiments from Aberdeen Hearts, Inverness, Partick Thistle, Falkirk, Stenhousemuir and the Lowland League should be sufficient for people to look at the SPFL. Now, the comments are the usual comments, but that seems to me, I mean, I know Ewan is a bit of a Hearts man, but, you know, he's right in this. You know, there's enough evidence there to suggest that an independent inquiry is required, and it actually feels like there would be one if Rangers weren't so far behind it. Compare that to, Ross, I'll come to you in this first, future First Minister Michael Stewart, who just seems to be a permanent bellend, for wanting a better phrase. He came out with an absolute cracking tweet the other day there. He effectively blamed Rangers for the clubs that were now going to be relegated for being in the situation that they were in, despite the fact that, you know, they voted against the proposal and they are the ones sort of leading from the front in this fight for an independent investigation. The God botherer, Graham Spears, he was another one. He came out, you know, as I said earlier on, Rangers provided their dossier at like 10 a.m. on the Thursday, and within 20 minutes he was tweeting, you know, oh, it's a lot of nonsense, there's nothing in this dossier, I've looked through it, there's no, the sort of words you were talking about earlier, Ross, smoking guns, all that kind of thing. And again, it kind of feels like these people are so entrenched in their views, which in my opinion does not make for good journalism and makes you question their integrity and if they're actually doing their bidding for someone else. How do you feel about some of the media comments that have come out this week?
Well, I normally try and avoid engaging with Celtic media, but I suppose in this case I'll make an exception. It's unfortunately it's everything you come to expect, with the exception of Tom English. somehow, English is kind of going down the same route as you and Murray, saying, look, there's enough clubs now saying that something stinks here. It's clear that something stinks and we should be having a look. Michael Stewart is bitter about the fact that he played 180 games over his entire career, and that he twice failed to get a contract at Rangers. He's taken that, obviously, not just a kind of bitterness at the club, but then obviously a hatred of everything that Rangers stands for, i.e., Britishness and unionism, all these things that he somehow associates with Rangers, and therefore Rangers are doubly bad in his eyes. So it doesn't matter what Rangers do. For some of these people, Rangers could be saving orphans from a burning building, and Michael Stewart would criticise us for contributing to overpopulation of the world. It's kind of irrelevant what they're saying, because what really, really matters is we need to get this investigation. Thankfully, the media don't have a vote in all of this. Spears is another one. Spears is another where it doesn't matter what we do. There will be no positive slant. I would have said the same about Tom English up until 3 weeks ago, but somehow he seems to have had some, I don't know, maybe a head injury that's awoken him in some way. It almost doesn't really matter what these people say. There's such an irrelevance and such a it's a dying industry, as we all know. They do not have a massive audience anymore. Graham Spears as well, a number of times he's been pictured at Celtic Park with his kids, who, considering he was apparently brought up as a Rangers fan, it's just silly. And I sincerely don't care what these people think. If anyone hasn't made use of the block feature on Twitter, I recommend you do so, because it'll just save you a headache. I think it's worth saying, Spears was clearly never sent a copy of the dossier by Rangers. Rangers would never entertain that. Rangers do not have any interest in engaging with Graham Spears. So the fact that he has a copy of that evidence within 20 minutes of it going to the club is a serious and significant breach of confidentiality. Rangers evidence does contain stuff that's legally privileged. So Rangers had to be very, very careful in how they handled that information. And the fact that it's with the media within an hour, the fact that it's with the SPFL within an hour, and that they're making statements on it, is a gross mishandling of sensitive information. And yet we don't really seem to be talking about that. That's actually something that is worthy of journalistic investigation, is which club is willing to break legal confidentiality, is willing to break legal privilege. That's a big deal, because that's compromising the entire integrity, or what's left of the integrity of Scottish football is gone. But the journalists are happy to look past that, because it means they get their scoop and they get to put the boot into Rangers one more time. A headline being, Colin, I sincerely just do not care what they have to say, because it will never be fair. It will never be impartial. I think it's probably impossible to be an impartial football journalist in Scotland, because the whole setting is just far too tribal.
I have a theory about Spears, actually, because he hasn't always been as sort of uber against the club as he used to be. He used to be quite centre ground, and he was brought up as a Rangers supporter. I think he had hopes of getting the top job at Rangers media. I think he felt he was going to get a job with the club, and it went to Lindsay Heron, and ever since then he's been quite stinging in his criticism of the club. So I think there's something personal. We all talk about Michael Stewart. It's obvious that Michael Stewart's miffed that he never got a contract at Rangers twice, because he was there as a boy as well. And I think that's what drives Spears on. I think I think David Murray pissed him off with going with someone else for that job at that particular time. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Coming to you, David, what's your thoughts on the media coverage and the likes of Michael Stewart and Graham Spears?
Michael Stewart, well, you've just got to pity Michael, haven't you, really?
That's our future First Minister you're talking about.
I'll crack the joke. You've got to pity Michael. I mean, Michael loves the sound of his own voice. That much is clear. His behaviour on Twitter. No, that I don't have a Twitter feed, and I'm unlikely to have one going forward. But occasionally, I do become aware of what's out there in the Twitter sphere, and his pompous release on Friday there was something to behold. Where he was falling over himself to congratulate Anne Budge on her behaviour and how she's handled things. All the while, as you've already mentioned, pointing the finger at Rangers as being and Rangers' behaviour as being fundamental to the breakdown in league reconstruction talks, and basically condemning the relegated clubs as per the outcome of the resolution to their fate. And it was absolutely hilarious. The fact that he continues to be given a platform after his behaviour in the James Traynor farrago, where he was implored by Kenny McIntyre to stop talking live on air in such a defamatory manner. Again, the fact that he's back and he's bumping his gums, as you quite eloquently put earlier in the show, it's only to be pitied. With regards to Graham Spears, I noticed that, as you've made mention of there, he immediately poo-pooed the dossier. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he may well have used the phrase water pistol or something akin to that, to actually, belittle Rangers' release. And I think Tom English actually corrected him, said, no, you need to actually, delve a bit deeper here. And I think he went further back in that and actually came out and said, well, there's obviously when he's actually been furnished with said dossier material and had I read it, he says there's actually some pertinent points here. So he's contradicting himself. He's actually showing up a mirror to many respects how the contradictory and aggressive stance of the SPFL press releases certainly via Twitter. And it just reinforces or definitely highlights the fact that Rangers have been consistent in this, along with other clubs. Other clubs like Hearts, Partick Thistle, Falkirk, Inverness have come out and they've maintained all along that there's issues with corporate governance, there's issues with the behaviour of certain individuals on the executive and the board, and that this can no longer continue to be the norm. And I don't think we've heard the end of this. If the AGM, as many people suspect, doesn't go in the appellant's favour, I don't think we've heard the end of this. This will rumble on until such time that the clubs can be safe in the knowledge and they have a significant degree of comfort that their needs are being met via their board and their executive. And it looks as though there's a groundswell of opinion. Don't forget, there's still tomorrow to go before the EGM takes place, where more clubs may well decide to come out and go public on their opinions about how the whole situation has been handled. That at the end of this, clubs will push and will continue to push for a better run Scottish football. And don't forget, in all of this, there's been numerous surveys conducted with fans groups with regards to how we can improve the game. Those feelings have been completely just disregarded, and we are, don't forget, we are the paying customer. You'd like to think that a company's executive would listen to their customers. The customer is always right, and we hold a lot of the cash that keeps Scottish football going, and cash is king, and you'd like to think that the executive would actually listen to their customers. But it appears that they are self-serving and they want the status quo to remain. But to get back to the point in question, I think that reiterate, I think the clubs will not let this go until they are satisfied that corporate governance is significantly improved upon within the game.
Well, time will tell, David. You know, as you said, we've got tomorrow to go. The AGM's on Tuesday, and it'll be another. I'm sure it'll be another week of claim and counterclaim for us to look at next week, guys. I'm really conscious of time, but before we go, I thought we would have a quick look at Steven Gerrard. It was his second anniversary through the week there since he joined the club. So I thought a quick sort of look at his time, pros, cons, and what he can improve on going forward. Ross, I'll come at you first. Pros.
It's hard to pinpoint actually pros. I could go into a lengthy monologue about how standards across the club seem to have improved. I think one pro is that we do seem to attract a higher quality of player than we would have done under Caixinha or under Warburton, certainly under Murty as well. So I think generally standards have gone up. There's a greater tactical understanding. There's a greater, maybe gravitas to how we prepare for games. I think the backroom setup has dramatically improved. I think we're just a bit more of a serious club now, rather than a bargain bin English League One, fake it till you make it SPL club.
And what about your cons, Ross?
Cons, a couple of things. I think he needs to work on the mentality of the squad, and a lot of that obviously was borne out in Tav's kind of infamous programme notes that he did a few months back about the squad's mentality not being good enough. That needs to improve, and if Gerrard could bottle up his winning mentality and give it to the players, that would be worth millions on the market. But I think he also needs to do a little bit of work around his media. I think sometimes he comes out and says things after games, maybe throws the players under the bus a wee bit, or says things that I think he might come to regret a little bit later on. So I think that's something he could possibly work on. You know, all you have to do is sit back and watch Walter Smith at work with the media. Never gives them too much. He's, kind of gives them short shrift. I think he needs to improve that area a wee bit.
And going forward?
I think he needs, honestly, my personal opinion, he needs to be less hamstrung by the kind of tactical philosophy that he seems to have come along with. And I think a lot of that's to do with his backroom staff, is that it's this way, it's 4-3-3, we play this structure and that's it. And if it's not working, it's because we're not doing it well enough. I think sometimes he needs to be a little bit more flexible and realise that Scottish football isn't played on paper. And sometimes the dark arts of Scottish football will be able to overwhelm the nice trickery of a high pressing 4-3-3.
And yourself, David, quickly, just pros, cons, and going forward for Stevie G?
Pros, quickly, I would say his performance and relative success in Europe has been a massive pro for me. He's put the club back on the continental map. Cons, I think he's hamstrung with the quality of player that's at his disposal. That may well change going forward. Hopefully it will. Now that the club seems to have extricated themselves from the grubby mitts of Sports Direct International. I do concur with Ross's feelings in the sense that Stevie would appear to be, how should I put it? He wears his heart on his sleeve too much. I think he's too honest. I think that's just the makeup of the guy. I think it's not a natural thing for him to be, how would you put it, more guarded in what he says. I'm not making out that he's naive in what he says, but I think the longer he's in the managerial game, and don't forget, his first job, a massive job, one of the biggest jobs in world football, for a guy to cut his teeth. So he's learning all the time, and the guy speaks with humility. I'm over the moon 2 years later that he's our manager.
And then going forward,
I think the number one thing is getting. He's got a number of monkeys off Rangers back as a club. The one remains. The elephant in the room is winning some silverware. And I think that if you sat him down and over a pint and asked him where would his priorities be, I think he would just tell you that it's a league title. So, but baby steps. I'd be happy with some form of silverware before the league. But I think he's driven, and I think he's bought into the ethos of the club. He's been up here 2 years now, and I think he knows what it's all about. And as he's come out and made clear in his recent interactions with the media that he's driven by success, and he's totally hell bent on delivering it.
I would agree with that. Pros, I'm with you, David. I've enjoyed the European stuff. Cons, again, I would agree with some of the stuff that you've said. He wears his heart on his sleeve sometimes, but I think that I genuinely think that's just how he is. I think he's someone with a lot of integrity, and I think he struggles to sort of be cuter than maybe he should be. And going forward, Stevie, if you're listening, just give us a trophy, mate. That's all we're looking for. And I'm like you, David. I'm delighted that he's still with us. Right, guys, that's all. We're sort of slightly run over tonight. That's all for tonight's Gersnet podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is by fans for fans, and the content is absolutely free. A big thanks to Ross and David for their contributions this week. Top stuff in what has been an interesting week in Scottish football. We'll be back next week. Obviously, there's going to be another week similar to this week. So we'll be back on Sunday night next week to discuss all that. In the meantime, get yourself on to Gersnet and the forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, look, we're in week 9. Again, just stay safe, everyone. I hope everyone's okay and there's nothing major going on in your lives in this sort of unprecedented time. And until next time, bye for now.